you look at your team, these top performers, they're your future leaders, right? So if you take these people and you put them in a place where you're now hindering what they believe to be their forward progress, now you start to like chip away at what those people believe is possible for your organization as a whole. And it's and that's like, cultural poison pill number one.
Every single manufacturer that I've met says that they collect data. But my question to them is how much of it leads to action? Today, we're going to show you how to go from dashboards that look pretty to digital standards that change everyday work and help your teams perform with more confidence. Hello, and welcome back to the Manufacturing Connector. I'm your host, Jim Mayer. Today, I'm joined by Dustin Bowe and Fletcher Sims from Plant Toolbox. Plant Toolbox is a single integrated platform that turns plant data into everyday action, standard work, and eventually continuous improvement. We're going to break down how this tool helps organizations eliminate guesswork, lock in digital standards, and empower people at every level to perform with excellence. So without further ado, Dustin and Fletcher, welcome to the Manufacturing Connector. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Happy to be here. Thanks for having us on.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, Jim.
Let's start with you, Fletcher. Tell us about your journey and how you got into this space and ultimately into this position with Plant Toolbox.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. I started my manufacturing career almost 10 years ago with Sanofi, which is a global healthcare manufacturer. So I started in manufacturing excellence, spent some time there, transitioned into operations and just operations leadership as an area manager, then as a plant manager. Worked there for a number of years. Transitioned to a new company here in Chattanooga, also in operations leadership as a site superintendent. And I consistently saw the same problem at both extremes, right? Sanofi, large, public, global, Southern Champion tray, small, private. The problem was not that different, right? They didn't have they had a lot of really well-intending people who wanted to do the right thing, but people who didn't have the tools that they actually needed to do their job well. And so I, as a leader, felt burdened for that to say, well, how can I create these tools? How can I create these systems for my team members to be able to do their jobs well, to be able to perform their duties with excellence and feel a sense of pride and ownership in the work that they're doing? And building those systems and ways of working is tremendously difficult. Now, Dustin and I had the opportunity to work together at Sanofi, and he had broken off around the same time that I went to Southern Champion to start Rika Solutions and to build Plant Toolbox. So after a couple of years, he started reaching out to me, and I was so excited by I wanted it for my own operation, Jim. I literally had a visceral, like my mouth started watering type of reaction. I wanted to have a Plant Toolbox in one of my own operations, but more than having it in one of my own operations, I wanted to help manufacturers who felt the same pain points to implement that same solution into their operation, right? So it's like I didn't want the scope to be limited to where I was. I wanted to make it larger than that so that we could have a bigger impact and create a work environment where people are proud and excited to come to work. I view Plant Toolbox, sorry, long-winded answer. But I view Plant Toolbox as much as a cultural tool as I do as an operational excellence tool. And I could talk a lot more about that. I won't in this moment, but just the opportunity to create a work environment where people love coming to work, they're excited to come to work, and they have the tools that they need to do their jobs with excellence at every level of the organization. That gets me out of bed without hesitation every single morning, and so that's how I ended up here with the Plant Toolbox and with Dustin.
Awesome. That's great. And Fletcher, just so you're aware, there's no answer that's wrong or too long on any of my shows. They're your answers, and your answer is your answer, and I'm not judging, nor is anybody else who listens, whether that was too long or wrong. So, yeah, Dustin, Yeah, you're welcome, man. Dustin, same question to you. Like, how did going from where you were in your career, what Plant Toolbox?
Yeah, great question, and thanks for giving me such a. I got a long runway ahead of me, so just to buckle up, let's just jump in. So, so, so I my career actually started off at Procter and Gamble, and whenever we talk internally, and I would say even whenever I talk with clients, I kind of tell them that like this was a dream seeded from a very long time ago, right? Like very early, like internship with P&G, that type of long time
Okay.
ago, and it was like this idea that like you want to make it as easy as possible for people to do the right thing, right? So one thing that I've always felt, and I still do today, is that you want to be able to work alongside people, meet them where they're at. So I would be like that process engineer stacking pallets alongside my team if something wasn't working well. It meant a lot to me that people weren't out there just suffering by themselves, right? And so what I saw was like multiple versions of, hey, we know what the right process is, but it requires a heavy burden on the team to kind of get the work done, right? And I saw different methods of like going about it. I saw different challenges that just different types of people would have, like, and just I saw these like just different systems that kind of like, I would say sporadically like presented themselves in that organization and then any other organizations I visited or spoke to, right? It's not like the gaps that we would see generally weren't like, hey, our systems are all broken, even though that did happen very, very often. But even places with like really strong systems, right? Like, as one of the things I like just loved about P&G, strong systems. Sometimes it required a lot from a person, right? Who's coming off of third shift, having to stack their 20th pallet, and it's like, okay, well, hey, how do I like make this portion of what we're asking them as easy as possible? How do we reduce the amount of interactions they need to have to help them to systemically apply the tools to their work process, to not just get this short-term gain, but to get this like long-term gain over time, right? So that was kind of like the vision. That was the desire. And I had a computer science background. I had this engineering background, and I just felt like this calling to take those two things and merge them together to try to like make these things easier for people. So yeah, I guess like Fletcher kind of said, I ended up coming over to Chattanooga and working for Sanofi. That's where we met, and Fletcher has a very different set of skills than myself, right? Like Fletcher is very, very meticulous, and it's so beautiful, right? It's like, but anyway, so after like pursuing Fletcher for way too long, I finally was able to convince him to take a risk with us in this like startup phase, and like, hey, let's go and like really try to do something amazing, right? Let's go take a risk and like just try to do something that we haven't seen out there, and in the way that we believe that it could actually make a difference, right? And the only other portion of that I'll kind of like maybe see it in there is like, I got a chance to, well, at Procter & Gamble or Sanofi, work on many very large projects in the digital space, right? And like one component that kind of always just broke my heart every time was watching my operations team, people on the shop floor, say up the ladder that it should manifest itself in this way, and then just watching those words like in real time just turn into something completely different that is no longer connected to that person. And it was like I'm watching this happen in real time on calls, and it's like, well, like it just baffled my mind. And that was just one of the things that again just resonated in this very impactful way. So for us, it's like really important that we stay close to the shop floor, we solve these problems close to the shop floor, and it's that desire that kind of birthed Plant Toolbox. And from there, what we've kind of just seen and discovered, and it's just been this incredible journey, is that like the more you lean into that, the more you lean into the idea of the person that you're helping is the person touching the equipment, the more you lean into those kinds of thoughts, well, then you start building tools geared toward those types of people. And then you end up in this like, and this is where I kind of feel like we're like in this like phase 2 of this. It's like, okay, well, now we have these tools that we never dreamed of in all these different places, and now these tools are interacting with each other in different ways. And now we're seeing this like just like this building on of those systems and processes. So anyway, so we're out here having a lot of fun. We think that and this is what we talk to our clients, it's like, okay, well, hey, yeah, the impact that we're having is this outsized impact, right? And we're just wanting to continue to basically take that, having felt many of these different roles, like whether it's like process engineer, plant manager, superintendent for Fletcher, and many roles we worked inside the plant, right? For stacking pallets on the floor, working in a water room, plant manager. We've seen many different roles, so we know it across the organization. But yeah, that's the dream, right? That's the dream, that's the vision. And yeah, fortunately, Fletcher was risky enough to come on board, and so far it's been pretty fruitful. So yeah,
I love it. So we met, listeners, watchers. We met at South Tech, right? What do they even call it now? Manufacturing Technology Series South. It's way longer than South Tech. But the way you guys tell the story of me walking by the booth, I'd love for one of you to share this story, because you shared it with me from your perspective the last time we talked, and it was funny, but it really will show the audience exactly why we're having this conversation today. So go ahead, one of you to tell that story.
Dustin, you're a better storyteller than I am, so.
I don't know if I believe that, but I'll do my best to fill in the gaps. Well, obviously we're at our booth, and different ebbs and flows throughout the show. But we see Jim kind of walk by, and we see his eyes glance down at our banner, right, and on the front of our booth, because we, again, like Fletcher said, we lead with culture, right? It's like very important to us. But we see his eyes glance down at our banner, and then we see him like just take a step back, like. Culture. He like look up at us. He sees me and Fletcher. We stare back at him. He looks back down at the banner, and he walks up to us. Well, I have to talk to you guys, right? And it's like, oh well. So we knew immediately that he saw that, and our banner at this show, I think our banner read like empowering people, right? Is what right. So it's like empowering people, and it's like we watched that resonate with Jim in real time, and he like walked up to us, was like, well, who are you guys? Explain to me how you're here at this tech show talking to other people about empowering people. Like it was just like this sincere desire to like what are you guys doing here? And it was like, great, let's talk about it. And so yeah, that's how I recall it. I don't know if I missed any parts there.
No, Fletcher, did he nail it from your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, our booth says we have that motto: equip people, achieve excellence, right? So the principle there is about the empowerment of people and how we can give them the tools they need. And that obviously resonated with you quickly, like Dustin was saying. It's like, well, what are these people doing at this show? Like we're probably the only booth that has any mention of actual, like, that's like a concern or a priority of ours, So it's you could tell that it was shocking to you in a very pleasant way. So here we are.
It was the best surprise from South Tech, right? Was that moment, and because it's not something that a lot of companies market or talk about even, right? Is how, especially in the software space, in this industry, how the platform that they provide is able to empower and build the culture internally for the companies that are investing in that software, right? And to me, that's such a huge part of change management, especially when it comes to digital transformation. So that you guys had me before you even opened your mouths, and then you both talked, and you're just good human beings. So of course I want to have you on my show. So let's talk about the platform. Let's talk about Plant Toolbox. What is Plant Toolbox?
Wow, that is a loaded question there, Jim.
Yes, that's why I do what I do, man.
Yeah, I mean, we call ourselves an MES, a manufacturing execution system. but we're very different from most traditional MESs. Our scope is a lot more broad. So traditionally, you think about MES and you think about data collection, like real-time data collection, right? It's like, well, how is my equipment performing? Where are the gaps in performance, right? And those are two critical questions to be able to answer well. Is like, where is my downtime actually occurring across my site, and so that I can know how I can allocate resources. But a lot of MES platforms will answer those two questions very well. They bring a ton of clarity and give you more data than you could ever want or need. And then the question is, well, what are you going to do with all that data? Like, what are you going to do with it? Because data without action is worthless, right? We kind of have those two mottos: equip people, achieve excellence, and then the second one, which is our second value proposition, is turn data into doing. And so what we say is that we give people the tools and the systems that they need to actually do something with that data. And in your intro, you hit the nail on the head. We have multiple different systems baked into a single application where users are able to create and maintain and reference with ease any digital standard that any user could ever want or need at the point of use within the application. So I'm facilitating a changeover. Well, what are my changeover steps? What centerline value should I be setting my equipment up to? I can see the 1-point lesson and associated image with it, right? What CIL tasks am I supposed to be completing for this given shift? And same comment, a 1-point lesson, image. I know the frequency. I know how much time it's supposed to take. I can reference the standard. We just have a tremendous opportunity where we take all of these digital standards and we make them available where they need to be available. It's like what Dustin was saying as part of the introduction, right? We want to make it as easy as possible for people to do the right thing, and we do that by introducing those standards and processes to them effectively at their point of use, right? And then those two examples that I just gave are limited to autonomous maintenance, but our application has I think we're up to 10 or 12 modules now. And so, we have action planning, we have safety, we have operations, which is that real-time data collection, the autonomous maintenance piece, which is bigger than the three things that I mentioned. Preventative maintenance. We have people module where you can build out skill blocks for that prescribe exactly how people are able to develop in certain competencies, right? So, there's a huge breadth to the Plant Toolbox application, and the goal was to just take all of these systems. This is a big problem that manufacturers have, right? Is they don't have the systems at all, right? And so that's not uncommon, and there's no shame there, because building systems and processes is extremely difficult. So they don't have the system at all, or they have systems that are independent and not communicating and not working with each other, right? And you lose a lot of synergy in that, because what we've been able to do is we take our safety module, for instance, when an incident is reported or when a leader conducts a safety Gemba walk, and any actions that come out of that incident or that safety walk get routed directly to their plant action plan, which they should be reviewing on a daily basis, right? So, and that's another way in which we're making it easy for people to do the right thing, is by putting those actions into a central action hub where they always know where to reference the work that needs to be done for the day that's before them. They can prioritize their work effectively as a leadership team, etc. Right? So that was that's how I would say that. Dustin, I don't know what you would add.
Not much. I would just say that the problem itself is like really subtle, right? It's a very subtle issue, and let me describe it in maybe to two different versions of it. So like, one is, well, hey, do you know what standards you need to be implementing? That's one subset of manufacturers out there, and like Fletcher said, carving out what standards are best, because it's like, again, going and taking a Six Sigma course and then bringing that back to your facility and trying to implement those, that's very different than a company that's been doing this for 350 years where everyone lives and breathes it, right? Like those are just very different places, right? And so that's one component. It's like, hey, well, what are the actual systems and processes that make sense for my organization? That's one portion. I think we have a decent way of approaching how to answer that question. But then there's another one. Again, it's just so subtle, and it's like, again, one of the things that's so important to us. Generally, if someone on the shop floor, and I would argue just someone in general, needs to spend any amount of time looking for the standard you're asking them to execute against, you should just assume that it's not going to be done well, right? And it's such a simple, subtle thought, right? But I've just watched this play out so many times, and the irony is I watched it play out in paper-based systems, but also digital systems that weren't implemented well. And what do I mean by that? So paper systems, hey, we don't have our center line sheets. Okay, good. I'm just going to wing it based on what I remember instead of walking to the office and get it. I've seen that play out several times. And you could say to somebody, hey, if you do that, I'm going to write you up because you're going to try to force it to happen. But again, we all know culture doesn't work that way. Third shift, you're not there. It just doesn't work that way. But then the same thing on the digital side, right? So I've been a part of deployments where we've had independent digital systems, and it ends up being more chaotic than the paper-based system because now it's to the person. It's like, okay, well, where do I go to do this, right? And it's like, okay, well, I need this tablet to do this, and I got to go to the computer for that, but I can't do these things. And it's like you end up with this disjointment that becomes painful, right? So for Plant Toolbox, one of our very large value propositions is that for the operator on the shop floor, our goal is to be their single point of contact, right? As much as possible. For when it comes to them executing their day-to-day work, I need to have my morning meeting, Plant Toolbox. I need to change over, Plant Toolbox. I have these work orders, Plant Toolbox. What's my downtime, Plant Toolbox? Because it's one place where they're able to access everything quickly. And it's this idea of like, okay, well, hey, how many times am I going to have to click on some button to get to what I need? And the lower that number is, the easier it would be for someone to use your application, and then the less time they'll spend being frustrated and trying to actually do the thing that you're asking them to do, right?
Yep.
So those are just subtle things, but yeah.
So how does the disconnected data affect, I mean, you guys are all about culture, right? And empowerment of employees. How does disconnected culture affect the people on different shifts, affect the leaders, affect cross-functional teams, to the point where you guys said, hey, we need to build this better?
Well, first, a big problem with having disconnected data is that your team members just don't have clarity on first, like how they're performing, and then what the problems are that they're experiencing, and then what the solutions are to the problems that they're experiencing, right? Because what you see across manufacturing all the time is, well, if I get trained on how to change this label roll by 5 different operators, then they're going to tell me 5 different ways as to how to properly change this label roll on a simple task like changing a roll of labels 5 different ways, right? And so the problem there is that you just don't have standards in place. So having disconnected data and systems, and in my mind, that kind of just comes back to having really it's a lack of standard, right?
Sure.
And those are kind of the questions that, yeah, let me not go down that rabbit hole. But what I would just say, and we I think I mentioned this to you when we were talking at South Tech, Jim, but like a big part of the culture piece. Are you familiar with Gallup?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So global analytics firm, right? And they have this thing called Q12 on employee engagement. And so Gallup says globally we have a 23% engagement rate. 23% of employees are engaged at work, which is just mind-boggling, right? But what's amazing with Gallup is that they say that the foundational reasons or the foundational ways in which you can help create engagement in the workplace, they're not complicated. They're
Right.
actually extremely simple. The first one is I know it's expected of me at work. And then the second one is I have the resources or the tools that I need to do my job every day. And so that's the bridge that Plant Toolbox, that's the gap that Plant Toolbox bridges, right? Is because when you have standards and when you have, those standards are in the form of tools that are clearly defined standards. I know it's expected of me because I know what the standard is, and also with the standard, I have the tools that I actually need to do my job every day. So with absolute certainty, we answer those two questions, and we create unity across teams. So first, second, third shift, they're all working from the same sheet of music. It's not like first shift does they work from the standard revision 3. Second shift is working with revision 1 because they don't know where revision 3 is, and then third shift just does whatever the heck they want because they're third shift. So it's like, hey, we actually have this up-to-date revision on how to properly clean the glue tips in our clean and purge the glue tips in our cartoner every shift. We know exactly how to do that, and we have the training standard in our fingertips when we're actually completing the work. So having that system where there's clarity on what the standard is, I think is what where you really create a lot of synergy, where it becomes a lot less about like, well, second shift never does that and third shift always does this, and it becomes a lot more focused on like the actual problems that you're solving for, and then instead of pointing fingers, right? Because that's kind of our condition. But when we're all aligned on the same and have clarity around what the standard is and what the expectation is, and the opportunity for that he said, she said, finger pointing, blaming minimizes pretty significantly, and you just create a ton of clarity for your team. Yep.
So Dustin, how does that clarity, that sustained performance that Plant Toolbox affords teams, how does that translate into improvement actions?
This is really, thank you for this question. This is good. And I'm going to start off by answering it by just going back just a little bit, just slightly, right? And kind of like talk about, I've had a chance to manage many different teams, many different sizes of teams, right? And it's so interesting because for a given team, you have, this is how I generally would classify things. Again, it's reverting back to my training basically, but these like three groups of people, right? You have these high performers, and these folks, small number, but they are going after it. You have this large middle chunk, right? Hey, I show up, I do what's expected of me, I go home, I'm moving the ball forward. And then you have this like lower tier, not that, and it could be for all kind of different reasons, stage of life, whatever it is, but they're less incentivized to move the ball forward, right? And whenever I like look at my team, I want to. It's so important to me for me to be able to meet people where they're at, right? I want to give someone every opportunity they have to be able to just exceed whatever expectation they have for themselves, or that expectation that would exist, right? And like, so for your top performers, when you start asking the question, like, hey, what does not having the data do for me? Like, the biggest thing you'll hear from them is it's slowing me down. It's slowing me down. It's making me move slower than I want to move. And I don't want to be hindered by it. Right. So if you have someone, and you got to remember, like, if you look at your team, these top performers, they're your future leaders. Right. So if you take these people and you put them in a place where you're now hindering what they believe to be their forward progress, now you start to like chip away at what those people believe is possible for your organization as a whole. And it's and that's like, cultural poison pill number one, right? When you start slowing down your top performers, you're in a very bad spot. Those folks, you want to make sure they have everything that they need to be, all the words that Fletcher said just now, they need to have all the tools made available to them to move at the pace that they're ready to run at. There's no pushing them. They're ready to be pushed, but they might not have all the tools, and you want to make sure that exists. For that middle ground, those folks, they need the standards, right? You want to make sure that they have the standards to be able to execute against, right? Again, no creativity, right? Like, hey guys, this isn't a situation where we need to be creative and invent a new way. We're not asking you to go out and do that. We want you to have what you need to execute against. We want you to do it at a pace that's safe and produces quality product, right? I've said these words so many times. Safe, quality product, here's the standard, right? And it's just like, but that's the bulk of your team. And generally, if you have those high performers and you have this middle band, then what you end up seeing is those high performers, along with this middle band, executing a high quantity of your work at the results that you're set up to get, right? At the results that your standards are expected to deliver. And what you end up doing is you create a system where now your results aren't based on how hard someone's working, it's now based on the setup of your system, right? And that's the big switch, right? It's like, okay, well, hey, Fletcher has this beautiful quote he loves saying, right? Like every system is perfectly designed to get the results that it gets. I think I got that, Fletcher, right? But it's exactly that, right? So that top end group and your middle band, again, that's going to be 80% of your organization. Those folks, given the right tools, will deliver whatever result the standard is set up to give them, right? So now the question becomes, okay, well, hey, am I just watching the scoreboard, or am I actually asking myself, well, what's my play? What's my playbook, right? And now what you are able to do is take a step back and then ask the question, okay, well, hey, my playbook says that when we change over, we do it this way. Is that the ideal way? So instead of just making changes to individuals and trying to like force someone to just run harder, or just force someone, hey, you guys just aren't doing a better job. That stuff doesn't work. Hey, what's the system? What's the standard? And as we make changes to the standard, how is this bulk of my team responding to it? Now, obviously, we got that 20% ban, and that's, I love to say I've been a part of a team where that hasn't existed. Maybe if it's a team of 2 people, maybe, right? But like even then, it's kind of like some days are harder than others, and it's not a slight against people. Again, like it's, we're human, and different people go through different things at different phases, right? So it's less about like who someone is and more about like where are they at. But for that group, you generally just don't want to give them an excuse, right? It's like, hey guys, I want you to have what you need, and yes, these are the expectations, but I also need to be clear that there's no excuse around you didn't know, right? Like I don't want that to be the opportunity, right? Because again, you could have poison pill number 2, that bottom 20%, they could come in there and very quickly, without the right guidance, start chipping away at the rest of the organization, right? And a lot of it, again, Fletcher called it out so well. It's like a lot of it's like simple, like, hey, do they have the tools they need to be able to do the job that's asked of them? Yeah. Is that true or not? And if you could get to a place where that is true, and now you have your team accounted for, then you as leadership, when you start pouring into your results and you're having these gap analysis, the gears that you're turning shouldn't be towards, hey, my OEE is 60% and I needed to be, it should be, okay, well, hey, what are my what are my input measures, right? OEE is an output measure, right? You can't just will OEE to go up. It's right. You just can't just, so it's like, okay, well, what are my input measures? What process am I going to change to actually make my results change with it? We know it's easy. Like, you can make it go down very easy by just removing processes and systems, right? Hey guys, Wild West, do whatever you want. So we know the input measures have a outsized control on the output measure. That's just how that works. But it's like, okay, well, hey, I want to be able to change these gears. And then Plant Toolbox is the place where that gets facilitated. And that's kind of how we view it. Long-winded answer, but yeah.
That was good. I was just going to add, I love the focus, the transition. Dustin, if you hadn't gone there at the very end, I was going to interject after you were done talking. But you're talking about focusing on the results, which is the output measure versus, and it's amazing, Jim, is that's what most other MESs do. They're focusing on the results, where I have this big, beautiful display that shows me my OEE and my line rate and how much money I've lost and all this kind of stuff. And that's one way of incentivizing your people. But what you end up, I don't know how deep I want to go down this, but what you end up doing truly is you start talking about like people's man, should I do this? We're going to do it. And you're
Do
going to
it.
edit it out if you need to.
Do it.
You're going to start talking about people's identity, right? Like people
Yeah.
are putting their identity into their work, into their performance at work. And if their OEE sucked for the day, then they're going to go home with their head held low.
Yep.
Whereas they could have done everything right. Like they could have done everything right and had a breakdown that, or whatever, the changeover didn't go as expected. They're training a new hire, whatever the case is. But when you transition that focus from that output and that scorecard, you are transitioning your employees' attention directly from something that is in their influence, but not really, kind of like loosely in their influence, to something that's directly in their influence, right? Like
Yeah.
I can execute against these processes and these standards every day. And regardless of what the scoreboard says, I'm actually not looking at the scoreboard. I did my centerline audit and all my center lines are on target. I completed all my CILs. I submitted 3 defects. I opened up 3 work requests to address those defects and already discussed them with my maintenance technician or supervisor, depending on what your org structure is. Maybe you just fixed them yourself. Who knows? But the point is that, man, I know I'm going home having executed against the things that the standards and the expectations that I'm supposed to execute against, and I left my best effort out there, independent of what the scoreboard says. And that's a really powerful thing, because then people, even in a hard day, know that they're following the process. There was this advertisement from Titleist. Do you play golf, Jim?
I swing clubs. I don't know if anybody would call it golf.
I share that sentiment. Yeah. Now they have a really excellent ad campaign though about you could look this up. I mean, Titleist is obviously one of the best golf ball manufacturers in the world, and they have been for a very long time and have maintained that reputation for a very long time. This ad campaign has a bunch of professional golfers who are just talking about the importance of the process and how excellence is a result of the process. And so it's just this highlight that you don't achieve excellence by looking at the scoreboard. You achieve excellence by executing against the process that's been defined for you. And that's like what our entire goal is, to shift people's focus from these output measures that it's like a vanity metric effectively, right? And it might make them work harder for a little bit until they get burned out. But when you can focus on putting your best foot forward every day because you have the tools in front of you and you have extreme clarity, you know exactly what you're supposed to do. All of your team members know exactly what they're supposed to do. There's accountability in that, and then people can go home with their head held high because they put their best foot forward by executing the standards and the processes that are expected of them. So that's
I love it.
The addition there.
I think that does so much for going back to that engagement metric that you were talking about, right? When people do feel like they have the right tools for their job, even in shitty days, they leave and they say, man, I executed. And Charles Barkley once said, sometimes your best just isn't damn good enough, which is such a powerful statement, because then you produce the right effect, right? Or outcome. So that's one of the things that I love most about you guys and about your platform here is what you focus on. All that being said, what kinds of shops should be using Plant Toolbox? Because one thing that I've learned coming from a non-software background is that different types of MES platforms or software platforms are appropriate for different kinds of manufacturers, right? Where does Plant Toolbox play best? What kind of facility?
I'm gonna let you take that one, Dustin.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say our bread and butter would be like discrete manufacturing, right? So if you think about your like food and beverage, or your folks who are like making, standard production line, make, pack, ship operations, that's like we shine really well there, right? Where we have a production line and we're creating discrete units of something, at 10 units a minute, or at 500 units a minute, or 1,000 units, whatever that number is, right? That's where we really shine. And that's the answer to that question. Like we shine really well there. Now again, because of what kind of Fletcher was talking about, like the different components and different modules we have modules that tailor towards making, which is like, hey, I'm gonna have a batch processy that's gonna feed my downstream like that is within scope as well. But for the most part, you have make, pack, ship, and that's where we shine.
Awesome. And so in that, by Indeed, was 80% of job openings in the skilled trades is looking for 3 to 5 years of experience. How are you going to get a young person a job when only 20% of the job openings available in a entire state are designed for somebody with less than 3 years experience, somebody coming right out of trade school or not even going to school, right? In the case of discrete manufacturing, a lot of these people come right out of high school and they go work at the plant, right? And they're picking up a role there. So I look at Plant Toolbox as a big closer of this gap of that knowledge, that gap that exists, because you're able to create these standards as an employer and say, look, follow this. You may have never done this job before, but I've created a system that will make it easy for you to then not only start, but the thing, and this is a multi-pronged, and this is more than I usually talk on my own show. What I love about you guys is not only where they start, but you also have this matrix, this career development capability built into Plant Toolbox. Talk to us about that, because to me, that solves one of the biggest problems that I see with manufacturers right now is people get hired for job A. That person doesn't want to do job A for the next 40 fucking years. They want to do job A that then translates into job B and job C and job D. And you guys provide that capability. Talk to us about that.
Well, here, let me just jump in just because you're just warming my heart in such a big way. And Fletcher, I'm going to let you just run with SkillBlocks because Fletcher cares deeply. I care about it too. Fletcher cares very deeply about SkillBlocks. I'll let you run in a second. But Jim, like that point, there's so few people I've spoken to across the ladder that like understand the point that you just made just now. It's hard to describe how few people actually understand that point, in my opinion. It's very subtle. Again, when you hear folks saying, hey, we need to hire this amount of experience in, right? Generally, what I hear and feel there is that again, you described it so perfectly. It's like our internal systems and processes aren't able to take someone from point A to point B. So we need to hire at point B so we don't fail immediately. Right.
Yep.
And it's not like and I'm not saying that as a slight to any organization or what, but it's just like, but that's just what it is. Yep. Right. Like, cause if you have a system internally designed to take someone from point A to point B and then point C, then I would call her name, but I'm gonna not do this because you never know where things end up. One of my best technicians, she was a mother, and she she was my labeler technician. I mean, but she had no experience in manufacturing prior, but she had this desire to learn, and she had the desire to go after it, right? And it's like, but again, we had this system where we say, okay, hey, we'll meet you where you're at, and your limits are whatever you superimpose on yourself.
Yeah.
So if you get someone who's like, okay, yep, you teach me and I'll go. You get someone to saying something like that, then yeah, the idea of like, hey, we won't look at you because you only have, half a year experience, 1 year experience, it starts to make less sense, right? And I mean, I think what you're describing is perfect. Now, the irony of that is like detrimental, right? So like if you could instead say, okay, hey, I'm going to take someone from point A to point B to point C, the likelihood of that person staying with your organization and more importantly, helping you to improve the actual processes itself because they went through it themselves, becomes
100%.
becomes outside, right? And again, it's just like, but it's this gap. It's this gap in. Well, we can talk about what the gap is, but there's this gap that exists, and it's just like, man, if that could just be flipped just for a moment. But again, the requirement is not, and I recognize it's not an easy one. It would mean that you would have all those internal systems in place to be able to do it, right? And that's where Fletcher's gonna talk to us about those systems. Hope that was a good transition for you, Fletcher.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that we just wanted to blow up with Plant Toolbox is tribal knowledge. Like whenever people say those two words to me, I feel like they just cussed at me. And so it's like, well, how can we eliminate tribal knowledge and take what is in the minds of some of our best employees and put them into a standard to share that knowledge broadly? And that's effectively what our SkillBlocks, one of the things that our SkillBlock submodule exists to do, is to give our users the opportunity to build skill blocks that have a detailed explanation of all of the different tasks that and their associated standards that a new operator might need to become proficient on or to train on, and then they just have extreme clarity on what they need to do to progress and to grow and to develop, and it's just one of those things where you can take these skill blocks that exist. Maybe Dustin was talking about the labeler. You have a labeler skill block, or any other piece of equipment you can imagine, but you create a skill block for it that has all of the training standards for how I actually operate it, how I maintain it, how I change it over, what are some of the autonomous maintenance things associated with it as well, and standards associated with it as well. And then they have that, and it's literally the playbook. It's the changeover playbook, except it's my own skill development. So you're putting the keys to their growth in their hands, where they can have readily available to them the skills that they need to develop in order to grow and to progress within their company. And I'd heard it said back in my military days, but nobody cares about your career advancement or progression more than you do. So you got to look out for your own. And when you can literally give the keys of the development to the person who wants to grow and develop and say, hey, you need to grow in this way, you are creating an opportunity for initiative, where there was none, because there just was no clarity around what needed to be due to grow or to improve or to have those opportunities to just improve your own skill set, right? So, and that's wonderful for the people who want it, and then for the people who don't, then that's okay too, because they have the things that they're going to train against, and then they're going to stop, or that's going to be just fine, because you need those people in our workplaces as well. So
yeah, yep. we need 40 years, right? Yep. We need those people. This is that tool. From what I've seen, guys, listeners, watchers, viewers, audience members, whatever you are out there, Plant Toolbox, from what I've seen, helps solve these problems. And I have, outside of the recruiting problem that a lot of manufacturers have, right, as far as like physically finding the bodies with the skill sets to come in the door, I think that's the only problem that I know that exists and is top of mind for manufacturers that Plant Toolbox doesn't solve directly. I think indirectly you guys can do that, because as people start to learn about Plant Toolbox, it's going to be one of those platforms that manufacturers can put on a job posting. We use Plant Toolbox, and people will want to join that organization because that is deployed within their organization. It's that powerful of a tool. So yeah, I'm going to stop soapboxing here for a second. I'm going to wrap up, guys. We've gone 50 minutes. It feels like 3. Give me one piece of advice from both of you guys, each of you, one piece of advice for a plant or a factory that's struggling to start in a digital journey. What's that one piece of advice?
Here you go. I'll go first. I know I'm just going to give you a much more in-depth answer than myself.
Hey man, you got to
but
stop downplaying your abilities, Dustin. I
I'll
love
give it a
Fletcher,
shot.
but stop
I love Fletcher.
stop making yourself less than Fletcher because you're a badass too. All right.
Well, that's very kind. I think I appreciate it. That's very kind. Yeah, I think there's this risk aversion that generally exists when you see all the noise around you. It's like the whole signal and noise problem, right? Like you see a bunch of noise around you and you feel a bunch of pressure to I have my bottom line, right? So if I'm in the plan, I have my bottom line that I have to guard, right? I have my expenses, and that's I need to manage that, right? And the idea that you're gonna go and take dollars that you have allocated towards your system and go spend it on some other thing that's not directly inside your four walls, touching your equipment or touching your like directly, um, scares some people, right? Like a lot of people would say, like, I'd rather just buy another labeler, right? And it misses the actual. It's like, hey, I think it's akin to trying to solve for symptoms versus what's actually wrong, the actual problem. And it just goes right back to like whole root cause analysis, right? But I think that hesitation comes from, hey, it's the pressures and trying to understand, how do I know that investing in this digital tool, because I can't touch it, right? Again, manufacturing folks, again, depending what industry you're in, they like to like bring me in here, walk me in, let me look at the equipment. I want to VAT it, I want to FAT it, I want to touch it, and I want to make sure it feels sound. I want to kick the tires. And when you're dealing with something that's in this digital space, it's like, okay, well, I can't touch it, and it costs this much dollars. Well, then what am I engaging with, and how is it going to directly have an impact on my folks? So what I would say to that is, my thought there is, it just goes back to your good old root cause analysis, right? Like, well, hey, like, yes, you could spend dollars addressing symptoms, and we could do that all day, or you could put effort and dollars towards addressing what's your actual process, right? Fletcher said the words earlier, what's my playbook, right? And there's different ways to do it. One thing we say, and different people hate when I say this, but I do believe in it. I think it's powerful. All the ideas that are baked into Plant Toolbox will and should theoretically work on a whiteboard, to be very transparent. It'll be much harder, right? But the ideas principally we believe in. These aren't, the ideas themselves aren't new ideas, right? These are tried and true processes that have existed for way longer than we've been around. Our value proposition is that the pace of which you want to execute against these ideas and how those manifest themselves across your team can be better suited in a digital format. But you would need to be able to say, hey, I see the value of those ideas and I see the gains from it being digital. Is it worth the investment?
Yeah. What about you, Fletcher?
Yeah. No, it's a really good question, because being in a situation when you're afraid to go digital is like I mean, that's a real thing. You know, it's new. Change is hard. I don't know. At the end of the day, for me, and I think this will answer the question that you're asking, Jim. But if it doesn't, then hopefully it still works. But the one of the other questions that I or quotes rather, Dustin hit one of my Deming quotes that I love to bring up. But the other one is around James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits. He says, "You do not rise to the level of your goals; you fall to the level of your systems." And so, I think like the question that I have. The reason that I love those two quotes is because it requires a ton of introspection, right? You have to ask, man, like, what systems do I have in place to enable these goals that I'm setting? Like, I can't just set this crazy goal without any supporting resources to actually make it happen. So, and then if I'm not achieving these goals, then why is that? And these gentlemen, James Clear and Deming, will invite you to reflect on the system. And so I think the question that I love to invite people to think about is, well, what systems are you happy with your goals? No? Okay. If not, well, what system do you have that's supporting it? And then if you don't have a system that's supporting it, or you do, and you're just still not achieving your goals, then you have to think, you got to think bigger and more broadly, and then be willing to take that step. Because to be honest with you, the digitization, it takes all of those well-established practices and ways of working that had been done manually previously, right? Like this is like lean manufacturing TPM methodology that is baked within our application, right? So like Dustin said, this is not a will this work. This is just a that's just not a question, right? But what we're doing is we're making those disciplines and ways of working even easier. And so, but the challenge is that people are not always necessarily familiar with those systems and ways of working, and so it can feel a little bit abstract and difficult to grasp. And so, but at the end of the day, you just, if you're not happy with where you are, then you're certainly not going to get there by doing the same thing. And then in the same vein, like what got you there won't, or what got you here won't get you there, right? So you probably are due a change anyways, if you're going to make that next step change in terms of how you're working. And yeah, I'm not sure if that answers the question, Jim, but I think it's just one of those things where you kind of have to, you just got to go, for it. And even if you don't have the most clarity. And wonderfully, we have a 90-day pilot, actually. So not that this is supposed to be a plug, but it's free, and you can just come try it and see what you think about it, and see what your team members think about it. And that's like why that's, one of those other barriers. We've literally created that in such a way where people can experience Fit for free for 90 days, and then also like they can be set up collecting data within a week effectively. So it's like,
that's awesome.
Because we've been a part of those projects that just take forever. It's like 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, and it's like, well, what are we working on again, and why are we doing this? It's like, no, you say, hey, yeah, we'd like to do this pilot, and we'll send you one of our data collection devices, and then by the end of next week or this week, then you'd be collecting data and have insights, actionable insights into your losses, and then you'd actually have a platform to take action against those losses as well. And those actions wouldn't just be action for the sake of action; it'd be systemic, digital standard actions that close that feedback loop seamlessly with your ways of working. So anyways,
awesome. Well, Fletcher, Dustin, thank you guys so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, please head over to planttoolbox.com to learn how to turn data into action and really, as you've learned today, truly empower your teams. While you're on the web, whatever you're watching or listening to this on, please subscribe or rate and review the show. Every time you do that, it's not for my ego. It's not for Dustin and Fletcher's ego. It's so that more people find it. There's something in the algorithm on all these platforms that every time you rate and review, I get more visibility with other people, which means more people will find out about Plant Toolbox, and more people need to find out about Plant Toolbox. So please rate and review the show. Go reach out to Plant Toolbox and say hi to Dustin and Fletcher. Take their free 90-day trial. And if it doesn't change your life, let me know, and I will retract this entire episode. Until next time, guys, keep making things. Again, thank you very much for being here, gentlemen. Talk to you soon.
That's good.